When it arrived, it was a huge bang thing like that. It was a very explosive matter. It was in the same order that compellingly showed that this same story had been current in Mesopotamia before the Hebrew text is likely to have come into existence.
The Sumerians are known as one of the earliest civilizations, but what really makes them stand out is their invention of cuneiform, one of the first writing systems ever created.
This is the traditional way of looking into one of these, just hacksawing in, and then you just sort of chisel it open.
Yep.
Good thing this is not the real thing.
Just as well.
And there you have the tablet inside.
Yes.
But gee, that's be very destructive.
Scientists have studied Sumerian symbols for years, and recently they decoded one that has raised new questions about their history. The discovery challenges old ideas and doesn't fully match what researchers expected to find. Instead of giving clear answers, it has created more mystery. So the big question is, what did they really uncover? And what could it mean for our understanding of the Sumerians? Join us in this video as we look into the truth. Scientists finally decode the ancient Sumerian symbol that appears across lost civilizations. For thousands of years, a strange symbol carved into ancient stone has puzzled archaeologists and historians alike. It appears in some of the oldest civilizations ever discovered, and is almost always shown in the hands of powerful or divine figures. Many people simply call it the Sumerian bag. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary object with a handle. But the deeper researchers looked, the more mysterious it became. Across many ancient civilizations separated by thousands of kilometers and thousands of years, archaeologists have continued to uncover the exact same unusual object. The most famous examples come from ancient Mesopotamia, especially from the Sumerian and later Assyrian civilizations, which existed more than 3,000 years ago. In detailed stone carvings, human-like figures and winged beings are shown holding a small bucket-shaped object with a clearly visible handle. These figures are often identified as Apkallu, mythological beings connected with wisdom and religious rituals. In many carvings, they stand beside sacred trees while carrying out what seem to be ceremonial activities. The object itself is almost always shown in the same way. It has a solid structure, a flat bottom, and a curved handle that fits comfortably in one hand. This level of consistency is unusual in symbolic artwork, where shapes often change depending on the artist or the time period. Here, the proportions stay almost identical across different carvings, suggesting that the object had a specific and well-known form. In many scenes, the bag appears together with another object that resembles a pine cone. Researchers believe this combination may represent a ritual activity, possibly involving the sprinkling of water or oils. Based on ancient writings, the most widely accepted explanation is that these objects were ceremonial containers, sometimes described as ritual buckets used during purification ceremonies. However, this explanation becomes less convincing when similar shapes appear outside Mesopotamia. At Göbekli Tepe, one of the oldest known archaeological sites in the world, dating back more than 11,000 years, carvings include symbols that closely resemble the same bag-like shape. This is thousands of years older than Sumerian civilization. Even more surprising, similar shapes have been identified in Mesoamerican cultures, including early carvings. These civilizations developed independently, with no confirmed contact between them. Yet, the object looks remarkably similar. This raises an important question. Why would completely separate cultures create nearly identical objects in their artwork? One explanation is symbolic convergence, where different civilizations independently develop similar symbols to represent the same idea. A container holding something valuable or sacred is a concept that could naturally appear in different places. However, the accuracy of the design makes this explanation difficult to fully accept. The object does not simply look symbolic. It looks practical and functional. The handle is shaped in a way that suggests it was meant to be carried. The base appears stable enough to sit on a surface. The overall design looks more like a real object than an abstract symbol. This has led some researchers to wonder whether part of the story is still missing. More speculative theories suggest the object could represent lost technology or tools that no longer exist. Others believe it may symbolize knowledge, power, or some kind of connection between humans and the divine. However, there is no physical evidence supporting these ideas. No actual object matching this exact design has ever been discovered. That detail is important. If these were common tools, we would expect at least one surviving example to have been found. The fact that they appear only in carvings suggests they may have been ceremonial, rare, or symbolic representations of something that was never intended to be preserved physically. Another important detail is who carries them. In almost every example, the object is held by important or mythological figures, rather than ordinary people. This suggests it had a special meaning or purpose, possibly connected to status, religious authority, or ceremonial practices. Today, the most accepted explanation remains that these were ritual objects used during ceremonies. However, that still does not fully explain their consistent design or their appearance across different cultures and periods of history. The Sumerian bag remains one of those rare mysteries in archaeology where the object is clearly visible, widely studied, and still not completely understood. It is not hidden or forgotten. It appears at some of the most researched archaeological sites in the world. Yet, there is still no single explanation that accounts for all the evidence. Sometimes the greatest mystery is not what we cannot see, but what we see repeatedly without fully understanding it. Before the Sumerian symbols were discovered, could earlier discoveries and hidden clues have helped lead researchers to them? Stay tuned for more. A hidden site that changed history. Before the discovery of this site, archaeologists believed that early humans did not know how to use iron and were not skilled at making pottery. They were also firmly convinced that settled life only began when people started farming. But Göbekli Tepe completely changed this way of thinking. The site suggested that it may have been temples, not agriculture, that encouraged people to live in one place. Before this discovery, researchers strongly believed that farming was the main force that pushed humans to stop moving around and begin settled life. However, Professor Schmidt's work challenged and reshaped that theory. His findings pointed to the idea that hunter-gatherer communities may have already created the early foundations of settled life long before farming began. In the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the same region but failed to recognize its true importance. While surveying the landscape, they came across a hill covered with scattered limestone fragments and assumed it was simply a medieval burial ground. They had no idea that something far more significant was hidden beneath the surface. Then, in 1994, Schmidt conducted his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Almost immediately, he realized he had discovered something extraordinary. Unlike the flat and featureless land around it, Göbekli Tepe rose gently about 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Interestingly, the name Göbekli Tepe translates to Potbelly Hill. Schmidt became convinced that only human effort could have created something of this scale and structure. The broken limestone pieces that earlier researchers had dismissed turned out to be extremely important. What once looked like ordinary rubble slowly revealed itself as pieces of a much larger and meaningful structure. Schmidt and his team began preparing to uncover the secrets buried deep underground. As excavation continued, they found no evidence of a typical settlement. There were no houses, no cooking hearths, and no small clay figurines that are usually found in sites from the same era. However, they did uncover tools such as stone hammers. Using these clues, Schmidt and his team carefully estimated the age of the structures, and their conclusions were later supported by carbon dating. Step by step, the true importance of the site began to emerge. Some might assume that people of that time did not have the tools or skills needed to build such complex structures, but this is not accurate. These early communities used flint tools instead of metal chisels. They were highly skilled at shaping soft limestone and carving massive pillars directly at the site. After shaping them, they transported the pillars a short distance to the hilltop and carefully set them upright. Once the stone circles were completed, they were covered with layers of soil. Over time, additional rings and layers were added, gradually forming the buried structures that are being uncovered today. During the first year of excavation, the team analyzed around 15,000 animal bones from wild species. These people did not domesticate animals or practice agriculture. Instead, they relied mainly on hunting wild animals for survival. However, the surrounding environment also contained wild plants and animals that could eventually be domesticated. Just about 20 meters away, scientists even discovered evidence of some of the earliest domesticated wheat in a nearby prehistoric village. These discoveries completely transformed how scientists understand the origins of early civilization. Earlier theories suggested that humans first learned farming and settled in one place before building temples or developing complex societies. But Göbekli Tepe presents a very different picture. Schmidt argued that the immense effort required to build these monumental structures may have actually helped drive the development of more advanced societies. In this view, cultural and social complexity may have come before agriculture rather than resulting from it. Schmidt also proposed another fascinating idea about Göbekli Tepe. He suggested that it may have served as a special burial site where people honored their dead. The site was richly decorated with detailed statues and symbolic carvings that may have represented spiritual beings or deities from their belief system, adding a deeper spiritual meaning to the entire landscape. Following the scientists' discovery of the Sumerian symbols, let's take a closer look at one of the most fascinating findings that emerged during their decoding. Keep watching to find out. The Apkallu and the Seven Sages of ancient Mesopotamia. Apkallu or Abgal are terms found in ancient cuneiform writings that generally mean wise or sage. In many contexts, the Apkallu are described as 7 demigods, sometimes shown as half-human and half-fish or half-bird beings closely linked with human wisdom. These figures are often referred to in academic literature as the 7 sages. In some traditions, these sages are connected to a specific early king. After the Great Flood, see Epic of Gilgamesh, additional sages and kings are listed in later records. In the post-flood period, the sages are generally considered human, and in some texts they are called Umanu rather than Apkallu. Another usage of the term Apkallu refers to figurines used in protective and apotropaic rituals. These figurines include fish-man hybrid forms representing the 7 sages, as well as bird-headed and other hybrid figures. In later writings by Berosus, describing Babylonia, the Apkallu appear again, also described as fishmen sent by the gods to teach humanity knowledge. In Berosus' account, the first of these beings, Oannes, a variant of Wana, is said to have taught humans the creation story, the Enuma Elish. The term Apkallu, therefore, has multiple meanings, but it is most strongly associated with wisdom. Translations commonly render it as the wise, sage, or expert. As an honorific title or descriptive epithet, it can also mean the wise one. It has been applied as a title for the gods Ea and Marduk, interpreted as the wise one among the gods, or similar expressions. It has also been used in reference to Enlil, Ninurta, and Adad. The term also specifically refers to the 7 sages, especially the sage Adapa, and also to protective ritual figures, which are often represented as statues of the 7 sages themselves. Could there really be a hidden story behind this symbol that left scientists amazed? What could it truly mean, and what secrets might it reveal? Stay tuned to find out. The rise of the Sumerians and the first writing system. This is southern Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers flow into the Persian Gulf. It is a land made mostly of clay and reeds, with no forests, very little stone, and a serious shortage of metals and other natural resources. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers flood often, leaving behind rich, fertile soil. However, unlike the steady and predictable flooding of the Nile, these rivers can change their paths suddenly, turning large areas into swampy, unusable land. Even so, it was in this difficult and unpredictable environment that the first great civilization, the Sumerians, began to develop. The origins of the Sumerians remain one of the greatest mysteries in history. Before they appeared, the region was home to two major archaeological cultures, the Ubaid and Uruk cultures. The Ubaid people developed early irrigation systems, built mud brick temples, and produced pottery. Later came the Uruk culture, which began constructing the first true cities and monumental temples, while also developing an early form of writing using clay tokens. The Sumerians appeared sometime near the end of the 4th millennium BC. There are several competing theories about where they came from. Some scholars argue that the Sumerians were native to Mesopotamia and were direct descendants of the Ubaid and Uruk cultures. However, linguistic evidence suggests otherwise. The Sumerian language is not related to any known language family. Even the names of major Sumerian cities such as Nippur and Lagash do not originate from Sumerian roots. In fact, these settlements already existed before the Sumerians arrived. River and lake names were also borrowed, and many agricultural terms such as plow, farmer, and sow appear to come from other languages. All of this suggests that Sumerian-speaking people may have migrated into the region and gradually adopted elements of the local culture. So, where did they come from? According to their own mythology, the Sumerians arrived by sea from a paradise island called Dilmun, which is identified today as Bahrain. Archaeologists have indeed found evidence of Sumerian presence there. However, the Sumerians appear in Mesopotamia much earlier than any clear archaeological evidence from Dilmun. Polish Assyriologist Maurice Winkler suggested they might be connected to the people who later formed the Indus Valley civilization. Others have proposed origins in Anatolia, the Caucasus, the Arabian Peninsula, or even Tibet. Still, the truth remains unknown, and their origin continues to be an open question. The development of writing was a slow and gradual process that unfolded over thousands of years. It began with the basic needs of early farming communities. Once people started producing surplus food and engaging in trade, keeping records became essential, and this necessity gave birth to writing. At first, people across the ancient Near East used small clay tokens to represent goods such as livestock, grain, or textiles. One token represented one sheep, so one token meant one sheep, while 10 tokens represented 10 sheep, and so on. It was a simple system of accounting. Then, around 3300 BC, temple officials in the city of Uruk developed a new and innovative idea. Instead of storing physical tokens, they began pressing them into soft clay to record information. This small change marked the beginning of the earliest writing system. Soon after, people started drawing simple pictures or symbols directly onto clay tablets. A sheep, a loaf of bread, a human figure. Each symbol represented a real object. At first, the system was large and complex, containing over 2,000 different signs, many still resembling the original clay tokens. Over time, however, writing became more advanced and structured. Symbols began to represent not only physical objects, but also actions and abstract ideas. For example, a picture of a foot could represent the body part itself, but it could also mean to walk, to run, or movement in general. Writing was gradually becoming more flexible, capable of expressing thoughts as well as things. As time passed, these symbols became increasingly abstract, making writing faster, simpler, and more efficient. Then, the Sumerians made a major breakthrough. They realized that symbols could represent sounds as well as meanings. In Sumerian, the word tai meant an arrow and had its own symbol. But once writing became phonetic, that same symbol could be used wherever the sound T appeared, regardless of meaning. This innovation made it possible to write full sentences with grammar, tone, and the full complexity of spoken language. Sumerian scribes used a reed stylus to press marks into soft clay at an angle, producing wedge-shaped impressions. This is why the script is called cuneiform, from the Latin word meaning wedge. Cuneiform did not remain limited to Sumer alone. It spread widely and was adopted by the Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Elamites, Hittites, and many others. It became the dominant writing system for recording trade, laws, myths, letters, and literature across the ancient Near East. Clay, as it turns out, was an extremely durable material. More than 1 million cuneiform tablets have survived to the present day, and archaeologists continue to discover more. Thanks to them, we now know a great deal about the ancient peoples of the Near East, their daily lives, their beliefs, their economies, and their stories. This Sumerian symbol holds a deep history, so let's go further back and explore the origins of the Sumerians themselves. Keep watching to find out. Ancient Mesopotamia. Rise of the First Empire. For centuries, the Sumerians and Akkadians lived side by side in Mesopotamia. The Akkadians, a Semitic people, first settled in the northern regions, but over time, their culture slowly blended with that of the Sumerians. As years passed, both civilizations became deeply connected, influencing each other in religion, politics, and government. A major turning point came in the late 24th century BC with the rise of Sargon the Great, often called the founder of the world's first empire. His story, partly history and partly legend, begins with a myth. He was said to be born to a priestess of the goddess Inanna. As a baby, he was placed in a reed basket and set afloat on the Euphrates River. A gardener found and raised him. As an adult, Sargon rose in the court of Kish, overthrew the king, and united all Mesopotamia under one rule. Under Sargon, the Sumerian city-states were unified, and the Akkadian Empire expanded from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean and from the Zagros Mountains to Anatolia. It became the first known centralized multi-ethnic empire. To control it, Sargon appointed governors and stationed soldiers across the region. His campaigns reached Syria, where he destroyed Ebla, and Elam, where he captured Susa. Akkad became the dominant power, often called the first superpower in history. His grandson, Naram-Sin, expanded the empire further, crushing rebellions and declaring himself king of the four corners of the world, and even a living god. Under him, the empire reached its peak. But soon, problems emerged. The Gutians from the Zagros Mountains began attacking Mesopotamia. Around 2200 BC, they defeated the Akkadian army and captured Nippur. After the death of later rulers, they overran most of the region. This period became known as Mesopotamia's First Dark Age. The Gutians lacked knowledge of irrigation systems, so agriculture collapsed, canals broke down, and many cities were abandoned. Eventually, resistance grew. Around 2120 BC, Utu-Hengal of Uruk defeated the Gutians and restored control to Mesopotamia. After this, Ur-Nammu founded the third dynasty of Ur, reunifying Sumer and Akkad and rebuilding the region. He is best known for building the Great Ziggurat of Ur and restoring irrigation systems. The government became highly organized, with provinces run by officials and a rotating tax system called Bala, where each region contributed goods for 1 month each year. Sumerian culture was revived, and the Sumerian king list was written to legitimize the new dynasty. Sumerian became the official language again, even though Akkadian was widely spoken. However, over time, the system became corrupt and inefficient under weaker rulers. Tension began rising, especially in the northern Akkadian-speaking regions. Beyond the Sumerian symbols that led scientists to dig deeper, could there be other artifacts that have already been found but are still waiting to be revealed? Stay tuned to find out. Mysteries of supposed ancient artifacts. Back in the 1980s, some people claimed these spheres were made by an advanced pre-flood civilization that we know nothing about today. One museum curator even shared stories saying they sometimes appeared to rotate on their own inside a display case. There was also a TV program that invited a psychic who claimed the spheres were parts of an ancient spaceship. But according to geologists, these objects are actually quite common. They are called concretions, which are natural spherical formations created when different minerals form inside surrounding rock. The seam-like lines on them are simply marks from layers of host rock, building up slowly over time. The Klerksdorp spheres come in different shapes, from nearly perfect spheres to flattened forms and even disc-like shapes. As for the story about one sphere spinning on its own, the museum curator also explained it clearly. He said that when he placed a sphere on a glass shelf during a journalist's visit, it naturally rotated slightly because of its round shape. The area where the museum is located also experiences small earth tremors caused by nearby gold mining activity, which could also make objects shift slightly. The oldest known human-like footprints may be around 6 million years old. They were discovered on the Greek island of Crete in 2002. If this dating is correct, it could mean that early human ancestors moved between Europe and Africa much earlier than scientists previously believed. This does not mean Africa is not the cradle of humanity. Instead, it may suggest that early human ancestors moved back and forth between continents over time. Some researchers believe these footprints were left by a bipedal creature, possibly linked to an early human ancestor nicknamed El Grieco. According to scientists who studied them, the prints show a very human-like shape, with 5 toes and a clear big toe aligned forward. However, some experts remain skeptical. They suggest the footprints might belong to a later European ape instead. A more recent study analyzed fossilized marine microorganisms found in the same sedimentary rocks to estimate the true age of the footprints and support the idea that they are indeed about 6 million years old. Another fascinating discovery that continues to interest scientists is the Dorchester pot. It is a metal vessel with detailed geometric designs carved into shiny silver. The pot was discovered in Dorchester in 1852 under unusual circumstances. During a powerful explosion, the pot broke into 2 pieces. Scientists believe it was originally trapped inside a rock, or large stone, known as Hudding Stone. The rock that contained the Dorchester pot is estimated to be around 500 million years old. This led to speculation that the pot itself might also be extremely ancient. However, a more accepted explanation suggests that the Dorchester pot is actually a Victorian-era candlestick holder. These kinds of decorative household items were popular at that time, so it is not surprising that such an object could be found. The Dorchester pot is often listed among so-called out-of-place artifacts. These are objects that appear too advanced for the time period they are supposedly from. If the pot were truly 500 million years old, it would suggest extremely advanced craftsmanship existed far earlier than known history. One additional mystery is that the pot has an engraving of a plant that may have gone extinct over 100,000 years ago. This is sometimes used as evidence that the object is extremely ancient. Another discovery is considered one of the oldest maps in Europe. It is a stone carving dating back about 4,000 years, found in France in 1900 at an ancient burial site. The carvings on the slab show a detailed map of a river network with about 80% accuracy over an 18-mile area. Unlike other stone maps found around the world, this one is special because it appears to show a specific region in scale. The carvings do not only show rivers and hills, but also settlements, burial sites, and field systems. Archaeologists believe the slab was not used for navigation. Instead, it likely symbolized power. The detailed carvings may have represented the land controlled by a local ruler, possibly a prince or king, showing authority over the territory. When power changed, the slab may have been reused as part of a burial structure. The artifact was stored in a museum cellar for many years and was largely ignored. It was only rediscovered after researchers read old reports and decided to re-examine it. They used modern 3D analysis to study it in detail. Their research showed that the creators did not just carve lines into the stone. They actually shaped and modified the surface itself to match the landscape's real topography with impressive accuracy. The Salzburg cube, also known as the Wolfsegg iron, was discovered in Austria in the late 1800s. Despite its name, it does not really look like a cube. It is more of a rounded object with 2 flat sides, a groove running through the center, and a surface covered in pits and small craters. Its unusual shape led many people to believe it might be something not from Earth. It was found when workers blasted apart a piece of coal. The coal layer it came from is believed to be over 60 million years old. The object moved between different museums, disappeared mysteriously in the early 1900s, and later reappeared again. A professor from Bond University suggested it could be a meteorite, but no typical meteor elements like nickel or cobalt were found. Later, researchers suggested it might be a human-made object, possibly another Victorian-era decorative item. Still, its true origin and current location remain unknown, as it has gone missing again. Have you heard of the Meister print? It is a fossilized footprint discovered in 1968 that has caused a lot of debate. Inside the print, there is a trilobite fossil, which is confusing because trilobites supposedly went extinct around 500 million years before humans existed. Some historians believe the dating is exaggerated. When the fossil was first examined, it was authenticated, but the scientists did not confirm it was a human sandal print, only that the trilobite was real. Another researcher later found a 6-inch impression that looked like a child's moccasin. However, the footwear appeared surprisingly modern. This led to wild theories. Could it be proof of time travel? Evidence that humans existed millions of years earlier than we think? Or a sign that something or someone else visited early Earth? Or is it simply a rock formation that looks like a sandal print? The truth is still unknown. In June 1936, a couple was walking along Red Creek in London, Texas, when they discovered something strange. A piece of wood was sticking out of what looked like an ancient rock formation. About 10 years later, their son broke open the rock and found a hammer inside. The hammer looked surprisingly modern. One researcher suggested that the rock surrounding it was from the Cretaceous period. What do you think about the discoveries scientists have made regarding the Sumerian symbols? Could these remarkable findings eventually reshape our understanding of human history and everything we thought we knew about the ancient world? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for following the scientific discoveries about the Sumerian symbols. Do you think the results lived up to what the researchers expected to find? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video on your screen to explore more discoveries. See you there.